have Neil Wainwright with us today, who is the CEO of Cira Apps. And I've had the pleasure of working with Neil from the sell side and to continue to engage with him as he's onboarded and then he's optimizing his environment even further with Consero. So we're pleased to talk to him about his experience and share that with this group.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. All right. So today what we really wanted to focus on is being able to hear Neil's story as he became the new CEO of Cira Apps. He was recently acquired and how that experience brought him to Consero, what that implementation looked like, and then where he's at today and where he sees himself being able to scale within the Consero team. So Neil, when we first talked through our sales cycle, you had newly been appointed as a CEO. It was a new private equity investment. You knew you needed to bring in new systems, which is super common that we see as you have a PE investment. And so really what were you seeing around reporting and your needs to change systems? And how did that change once you came to Consero?
Well, it's a great question. I came into Cira Apps June 12th. And I think the comment from the founder, who's our current CTO, and I work with him really well, is that he said that when my wheels hit the ground, they were spinning. So I just came into Cira and I got to know, I'd known the organization a little bit in due diligence and prior, but I really got to dig in and I realized, we were running on QuickBooks. I know with PE involved, we're going to create holdcos, we're going to create all kinds of other subsidiaries, and then we're going to start doing acquisitions. And we can't live on QuickBooks doing all that stuff. So I decided, I started June 12th. By the end of July, I'd signed an agreement with Consero. The month of August was implementation, and we went live September 2nd. So literally less than 90 days after I assumed the role of leading the company.
That's fantastic. And what would you say your overall experience, knowing those objectives of getting off of QuickBooks, how are those met for you?
The relationship with Consero has been great. I not only we're changing the accounting system and obviously our finance partner, but I also put in an HR system. I spun up a new subsidiary with its payroll. I implemented a new CRM platform throughout the organization. And this particular implementation of moving to Consero and Intacct has been the best of all of those projects. It's gone really smoothly. And we've really appreciated the way that Consero assembles a team around the implementation. And then they have an operating team that works with me past implementation, but they have two separate teams that kind of coordinate and work well together. And that's been really, I think, instrumental in making sure this went off as quickly and as smoothly as it did.
And I think, Neil, kudos to you on that. It's one thing when we have clients that are able to accomplish in 90 days onboarding with Consero, but the level of additional payroll and CRM, I mean, that's truly what takes organizations a year to accomplish. So definitely kudos to you.
Thank you. I think in my last recent board meeting, they mentioned that they underwrote the deal, assuming that I would accomplish all this stuff in 2025, and I did it in my first 90 days.
That's fantastic.
So it was a good board meeting.
That is a good board meeting. So going back a little bit more to some of the specific things that we talked about when we originally started working together, Neil, you were having challenges or targets to have financial controls, better reporting, knowing you would have things like board reporting. So walk me through what that looks like from where you were when we first talking versus how that's changed post the implementation.
Well, I've used Excel since it was Microsoft Multiplan only on a Mac. So I've been around a long time and I've used it a long time, but I don't think Excel should be the way you're producing and reporting your finances on a regular basis. It should be coming directly out of the accounting system and with full integrity and controls. And what was happening prior is because this was a founder-run business and it was run very well, it's profitable, it's successful, it's growing. But it was run as a small to medium business. And now that we're starting to get into a larger size organization, I knew I needed the kind of controls around the money and everything else that goes into that I didn't have with running on QuickBooks. So I knew I needed to move to a new team and a new system that could handle all of that. Now, our existing team has actually moved into an FP&A role, so they haven't actually left the company or anything like this, but I knew I needed to supplement and add something like Sage Intacct and Consero to the mix to make sure we were able to scale going forward. And honestly now, part of the PE mix is typically to do acquisitions. And I now have an environment and a system where I can easily tuck in acquisitions financially and have them run as separate entities underneath the parent or the holdco, and do that very efficiently and smoothly.
And I would guess that if you're asked to do that, you'll probably get that finished in 90 days and instead of the year plan that your board might set for you.
Well, the funny thing is, I'm kind of coming up with acquisition targets faster than the PE company that I'm working with, who's tremendous, by the way. But yeah, I tend to move fairly quickly in most things I do, but
That's
safely.
fantastic. Important difference. And so Neil, can you expand a little bit too on, obviously you've done this before, you've worked with F&A teams and building in-house. Walk us through how your experience was in contrast working with Consero, getting a full tech stack stood up, the processes, the people that are going to scale with your goals. How has that been different than from what you've experienced in the past?
Um, it's just the way the processes that Consero brings to their onboarding, and the people they get involved are really top notch and high quality. They're also very patient because, of course, we were run as a founder-led smaller business, and then we come in with all of these extra controls and processes and a new tech stack for our financial systems. And you were patient. Consero was patient with us as they asked. You asked us for a lot of information, a lot of schedules, a lot of things to deal with. You then analyzed all the data we gave you, and any gaps that you saw, you asked us to clarify and clean up before they went in. Because we've loaded, I think 2 years prior P&L and balance sheet as well. So we went through a lot of data checking and validation. And your onboarding team is obviously very skilled at that, and they have really good processes because it worked very smoothly. And we appreciate all the patience you had with us as we went through things and had to gather information that we perhaps didn't have, at the tip of our fingers before.
That's great feedback. Thanks, Neil. One thing I want to touch on too is in our original assessment, we did a scorecard. So part of what we do when we're assessing prospective clients is we evaluate their teams and their processes on, are they ready to scale? Are they gap compliant? And we give them a scorecard and we say, here's where we see your strengths, here's where we see your weaknesses. And some of the things that we talk through is really a lack of operational financial leadership that can drive some of the core accounting functions. And then, a big one of management reporting, KPIs, that financial visibility. How would you say that's changed over the course of working with Consero?
Wow. Well, in our loan covenants, we actually get covenant reports straight out of the accounting system. No need, very little interaction with Excel, which is tremendous. The P&L, the balance sheets, all the consolidation, we're now multi-entity. All of that happens automatically within the financial system. So that's wonderful. In terms of the controls, we started out as a small medium business where lots of people had not lots. Some people had access to the bank accounts and ability to wire and transfer money and all that kind of stuff. We wanted to really tighten that down, and that's part of what we've done with Consero and its financial system. Is now I have a web portal called Simple where we can approve all vendor invoices, and it goes through multiple stages of approvals. Once everything's finally approved, there's only a few of us that have the ability to release the funds to the vendors. And the controls we basically have around our money and our processes are a lot more significant than they were before, just because we're now PE backed and obviously are looking to a lot of growth in the future.
Fantastic. So do you feel like from that original assessment where we kind of showed, here's where Consero is going to bring you to a scorecard that's representative of being a successful function, do you feel like we've checked those boxes for you?
Yes, I intuitively knew all the stuff that you gave me in your scorecard because I've been through this a few times. But absolutely, that scorecard was really good as an assessment, as a current state that we obviously wanted to move off of, and we certainly have accomplished that in the last couple months.
Great. Glad to hear that. So now let's turn around and think about like an alternative. So obviously you went with Consero and we were able to implement the systems, the processes, and the people. But in that early stage, we had talked about what your alternative was to build this in-house. What would you think of your thoughts of the comparison of what that would have looked like and knowing your investment of what, you're working with Consero, how that would have looked?
Well, in the initial budget I got when I landed, I had the ability and the budget to hire a CFO full time. For less than that budget, I've got a whole accounting team and a full accounting system, including the migration. I didn't want to tell you that before I signed the contract with you, but I can tell you afterwards. And if I tried to build it myself, I have to go find a CFO. Hopefully, I pick the right one. Then that CFO has to hire, a VP finance or a controller, has to hire add more team members to the accounting team. It's going to cost me 2 or 3 times more. And most importantly, it's going to take me a lot longer. And the other thing actually is I'm going to have more risk, because if I made a mistake on that CFO hire, then maybe everything after that is going to be wrong. So when I partner with Consero, I know that it's a proven organization with a lot of established processes and a lot of customers that they work with. So it was a lower risk for me and a faster implementation than going with building it on my own.
That's fantastic, Neil. And I think that covers a lot of the topics that we wanted to cover of your experience with Consero, with the onboarding, and where you've come to in fruition of your project of working with our teams. So Allison, unless Neil, you have something else to add, I will hand that back to you.
Well, I think the old story is you can have things good, fast, or cheap. Pick 2. And I think in my relationship with Consero, I hit all 3. And I'm really appreciative of that, because it allows me also to invest more in our financial systems than I would have otherwise been able to do. So, I know you and I are talking about other ways you can help us in our business around our financial systems and controls that we didn't originally subscribe to. But because of the budget flexibility I now have, I can actually look at those things, which otherwise might have been things I would have to defer in building my own full-time team.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one, Neil, because I think not only did you fully get optimized, in a very rapid time frame, but through your leadership, you're looking at further optimizations and building out how do you have integrations with other partners and add that on to our core tech stack to really empower you to achieve your goals. And that's where we get really excited, is to be able to meet those objectives in the way that you want to run them, giving you the control of your finance function.
Yeah, and you might have accelerated my ability to acquire other companies by 1 or 2 quarters with this relationship. And I think that's really important from a speed of growth perspective, because I am backed by PE, and that's one of the objectives they have for me. So it's basically been a wonderful win-win. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.